Let's begin. I'm really glad this movie didn't turn out to be one astronomical ad. Ad Astra is directed by James Gray and stars Brad Pitt and follows the tale of Roy McBride, whose father ends up going through space on a... I don't want to spoil anything. He goes on an expedition to research something and ends up leaving for more than like 16 years or something like that, leaving a huge absence in Roy's upbringing. And the whole movie is essentially Roy grappling with this whole idea and trying to figure out how to move on from this or to tackle it straight on. We'll go ahead and start off with the pros. I really enjoyed Brad Pitt's acting. He does a good job. He's a bit stone faced at time, but just like in Blade Runner 2049, it's kind of in his character, just like Officer K in that movie. It's just how he's supposed to be, but at least Officer K was a robot, so it made a bit more sense. But he has this whole thing where his heart rate has never gone over 80 beats per second or something like that. So he's generally a really calm person, even during life-threatening situations. And over the course of the movie, they tell him that his father might still be alive, so he goes on an epic journey to figure this out. And Brad Pitt did a good job at conveying what he needed to. I wish his performance at the beginning wasn't as just blank. I mean, I get why it's blank. It serves a purpose, but it's very slightly too blank. Other than that, as he gets through, some of the more emotional stuff as the movie goes through is he does a good job with. Speaking of that story, it's a decent story. I like the script in terms of dialogue and like what they say. There is this voiceover which I'll get to later as well. It has some interesting ideas with the voiceover, but sometimes it was a bit too on the nose. I know this is pros right now, but whatever. It's my review. Stop. Anyway, yeah, I like the story. I didn't think it's as strong as I'd like it to be. Otherwise, the movie did have really pretty visuals. I really enjoyed the way the movie looked. Some really beautiful shots done with the lighting of the solar system and things like that. Picture like kind of Interstellar in the sense of, and Gravity in the sense of like those beautiful space shots you can get. I don't think it was on par with Interstellar. I think Interstellar is still better looking, but I still really enjoyed some of the shots that they were able to pull off with this. And seeing really beautiful shots in space is just, it's nice. It's great. It's hard to pull off. There was some good directing work. It felt like exactly what he wanted to do, and it felt like he was able to convey what he wanted to convey. And I'm already starting to dabble into the cons, so it's whatever. The movie is a bit slow. It's like really slow paced. It's not as high stakes as Interstellar was, or even Gravity. It's supposed to be more of a space drama, I guess you could say. And in that sense, it does a good job. But even then, it's a bit slow for what I'm used to. I enjoyed Blade Runner 2049, and that movie is really slow. That one's enjoyably slow. This one, during the slow scenes, it felt like a bit too much, where you were just kind of lagging on some specific scenes, and he wanted to hold on that for a bit longer to, I guess, build more character with Brad Pitt and what he's doing. But I feel like they could have shortened some of it down, because it is a kind of longish movie. I think it could have been a lot quicker. There were some interesting choices that they made with regards to how, in specific, what I'm thinking of is this voiceover that shows up for Brad Pitt's thoughts throughout the movie. I like the idea. I see what they're going for. They chose this like really deep, echoey voice modifier for his voice for that, and it's a cool effect, but whenever he's saying like full things that he's thinking and like all this stuff that he's saying, it's a bit too much. It kind of pulled you out a bit, because now all of a sudden you're focusing on like this loud booming voice which represents his thoughts. And I like the dialogue for those, but they also feel a little bit too on the nose, like I mentioned earlier. A little bit too on the nose in the sense of like, oh, look at me, I'm being introspective. Generally it was good. It's just some parts it felt like it was like, oh, look at me, I'm introspective, I'm pretty cool. And I mean, I am, but I don't know about the movie. Anyway, my final comment on the movie would probably be the ending, or the climax specifically, because the climax of the movie happens and it just kind of happens, and then it keeps going. Most of the stuff that technically happens after after this climax happens, you don't actually see. It kind of skips forward to after they're leaving the after he's leaving the place, and then it keeps like flashing back to during the part where the climax happens, and it's a really odd choice because like the climax happens and then stuff's happening, and then I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not gonna. Stuff's happening, and then once the stuff stops happening, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, it's time to leave. And then all the other stuff, he talked about some stuff, and he investigated some stuff, but it just doesn't show him doing that, and it kind of slows it down a bit because now all of a sudden you're flashing back and forth between the present and like what happens during that time that you just skipped. I feel like you could have just shown real quick what happens and then move on, and like keep the thing flowing a bit smoother. One of the choices that happens somewhere in the climax is a bit over dramatic, I guess. I mean, it makes sense for the character, but I feel like it could have been handled better with what happens with the character. I don't know, it just felt slightly unsatisfying because then all that happens, and then he has the resolve to go on, and that's like his main growth as a character, where he goes on this epic journey to find his dad, and then he gets to this point to where he doesn't want to go on anymore, and then he's like, all right, let's go. And then there was this whole sequence where I don't think this is much of a spoiler, he grabs like a piece of metal from like the ship and uses it as a shield. He uses it as a shield through like a rock storm, and like perfectly flies through the rock storm, ending up on the other side where he needs to be. This is in the middle of space. I think it's Jupiter's rings that he goes through with like a metal shield. After grabbing onto this like spinny thing on one of the ships, he grabs onto that spinny thing and then like lets it launch him at like ridiculous speed for how fast that thing was going. Way too fast. And he suddenly like flies through the entire rock field with just like a piece of metal, and it's really it's a bit much. It's a bit much. Overall, though, I did enjoy the movie. I always like seeing like space movies that deal with space, especially if it has like a bit more of a dramatic side to it. I really enjoyed Blade Runner 2049, and even though that's not really space per se, but it kind of falls into the same category of like futuristic, because this one's still kind of in the future. It's not too advanced, so it's pretty similar, except like obviously the space travel further than the moon and stuff like that. To me, like it kind of falls within the same category. Even Gravity, in the sense that it feels like really futuristic, even though Gravity technically is just like the same technology we have today, but to most people you don't really acknowledge that, or you don't really think about that because you're not actually out there flying the spaceships or anything. So to people that don't do that, it feels very like futuristic, and I generally like those kind of movies, especially whenever it tries to include the drama elements and stuff like that. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I wish they could have improved on those little points here and there, but I think I give it like a 7 out of 12. Is it? No, yeah, we'll go with 7 out of 12. That's a good egg. I forgot my rating system. If I edit this, then I guess it's okay, but if you who I think will edit it, then I'm sorry. But I don't remember. So I give this movie a nice 7 out of 12 eggs. It's a nice sunny side up egg, you know? It's like somewhere right here. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bing!